So that took forever, like literally everything that's part of this van build. Check out my window. Looks kind of like a half-built house in here. Maybe a quarter-built house. Nice. Alright, I'm about to start the framing project for this van. I started by taking my bike and removing the front wheel and seat and measuring how tall it was just as a starting point for my bed platform. And then I put up some tape to try to visualize the bump out boxes on the sides of the van to maximize the widthwise space. And then I used that rivnut setting tool to go through and set a ton of rivnuts on both the driver and passenger side of the van in pre-existing holes. I was using these M6 rivnuts and just going one at a time in places where I wanted to add these furring support structures. Then I started cutting down the furring strips and pre-drilling holes for the bolts to pass through. So I used a drill bit to drive through the hole and then flipped the boards over and used a countersink bit to allow the bolts to sit flush against the board. And then I took the furring strips into the van and used M6 bolts to fasten the 3/4 inch plywood strips to the sheet metal of the van. So my plan for the bed platform was to have 3 3/4 inch furring strips on both the driver and passenger side, and then a 2x6 board running behind it that the actual crossbars for the bed would sit on. And I also added this easy cool reflective insulation behind the 3/4 inch plywood strips so that the wood wasn't sitting directly against the sheet metal of the van, and also just to add a bit more insulation. So anywhere where I put one of these furring strips, I added this reflective insulation behind it. And then I finished the basic bed support by drilling holes through both the plywood and the 2x6 support board and running bolts through and torquing, fastening those boards together. And that created a really solid platform for the bed. That took forever. But I've got 5 aluminum crossbar supports for the bed installed. So what I did is I cut 1.5 by 1.5 notches in my 2x6 support boards on either side. And then I went through and kind of test fitted these aluminum bars and cut them to the appropriate length so that they couldn't slide out. And then I did another pass to expand each of the notches a little bit so that this rubber material can create a compression fit in each notch. It's probably a bit hard to see on the camera, but these are all super solid now. The clearance from the floor to the very bottom of these bars is about 28 3/4 inches. So if I completely point my toes and stretch out all the way, my head just touches this wall and my toes just touch that wall. Success. 2 bars are supporting me. This hurts really badly. I feel like I just built monkey bars. I just installed 2 like utility scene work lights on the outside of the van. They're called Rock 9 LEDs from the company Lightforce in Australia. So here's what they look like from the outside. I haven't hooked up the electricity yet, but they'll be an amber color once I turn them on. It's kind of a better view of it. So they're angled at 30 degrees downwards. The idea is, like, if I do put an awning on top at some point, I'll be able to flick a couple lights on and have like a floodlight effect right outside the cargo door. So in order to fasten these to the inside, I drilled 3 holes, one for the positive and negative wire, and then 2 for bolts to fasten it against the van wall. Okay. just hop up and grab the other side of the sheets. Have a nice day. Alright, I got some tips for you. So if you're framing out a camper van and using rivnuts, the two biggest things that have helped just save me in this process are these. First, this Permatex anti-seize lubricant. The other thing is this little threaded and pointed tip insert. It shows you how to transfer the hole onto your board, so you know exactly where to drill the hole so your bolts match up on the board. Okay, so here's what I'm doing to install these furring strip boards. First step is I circle out the existing holes in the van where I want to install rivnuts. And then I grab rivnuts and this Astro 1450 tool. So I'm going to use 3 of them here. And you thread a rivnut. And you insert the tool into the hole in the van. You squeeze until it's like feeling like the tension's very tight. Then you loosen it a bit, squeeze a bit more, loosen it a bit more. And if you want to tighten it a little bit more, you can always insert the thread a little bit more and add a little more tension. It feels good. And there we go. Next, once I get my board cut to the size that I wanted, I did this one as 43 inches long by 3 inches wide. And these are 3/4 inch sheets of Baltic plywood. I take these transfer screws and put one in each of my rivnut holes. These have been awesome. They make it so much easier, honestly. It's so nice. So next I measure the dimensions of the wall area. Nice. Close my rings. I cut some of this Reflectix or Easy Cool, I think it's called, to be on the bare metal. I can just feel it. This sheet metal is so cold right now, and this is just like, I don't know, almost even warm to the touch. It's a wild difference between these two. So once I have this Easy Cool in place, covering the sheet metal of the van, I use this aluminum tape. So next I identify the pokey spots where my 3 transfer screws are. So here's one of them. And I use a utility knife to cut a hole for my bolts to go through the wood. there's this Ford Transit wiring harness that I need to account for when I'm framing out the van. So what I did was I cut a hole in this foam blob before it came out of this side. I rerouted it up here, and I'm running it along the top, all the way over here, over this furring strip, with cables that are coming from my solar panels and to my passenger side fuse block, my 120 volt line for my passenger side, and a dedicated 120 volt outlet, maybe for a hot water heater. So these are kind of all grouped together here. So it runs down here and is fastened to a bolt that's added to this furring strip. And I cut this furring strip down to allow the wire to run right by it. And then it goes down between these two furring strips and then splits off to go to its respective locations. And on this side, it just kind of routes between two of the furring strips on the passenger side. So next, I make sure my board is like reasonably level. Once I get it reasonably level and in position, I press in the areas where the transfer screws are. Just really the whole board, but that will leave a little dent on the other side of the board and show me where I need to drill my holes. Then I'll circle. That's what the dents look like. So I'll drill holes based on where my transfer screws marked. And I countersink a little indent on top of each of the holes. The bolt will sit flush with the board. So now I can finally install the board and thread the bolts through the hole. And then I can start tightening the bolts. And if I find that the bolt is sticking or it feels like it's catching, like this one actually, this one feels a little too, like there's too much tension, maybe it's rubbing the wood or slightly misaligned. I'll wait to tighten this one, tighten the other bolts first. I'll use a little bit of this Permatex anti-seize, and this just makes it so the bolts go in super smoothly. A bit of this stuff on. This is incredibly messy. If you get any of it on your hands like I just did, it just goes everywhere. And with some of the anti-seize on, stick it back into the hole. And now it goes in like butter. I finished the framing. Check it out. I got these bump out boxes, one on the driver's side for sleeping, one on the passenger side. So the plan is to run my bed crosswise. I'm 6 feet tall, and that will allow me to sleep widthwise in the van. And then what I just did was built this frame box for the window on the driver's side. So this is pretty cool. I got this frame that's going to run flush with the wall all around the window. And then I framed it out and kind of fastened it to all my furring strips using both like rivnuts, Craig pocket hole jigs, some wood glue. But that's going to make this window look a lot better and make it so I don't just accidentally drop stuff through the wall. And yeah, I guess last is I added this alien style reflective insulation all across the ceiling and furring strips to the ceiling. And I added a little bit more support with this board to my front max air fan. It's just because there wasn't much support here on the roof. But I'm super happy with this. I think this is a really good base for the walls and the roof and for adding all my furniture and stuff inside the van. So let's go on to electrical.